Good morning. I'm Roman Vaxiard. I'm a professor of economics here at UCLA Anderson, and I'm very pleased to welcome Mayor Richard Riordan this morning for a conversation on the topic of the finances of California and more specifically Los Angeles. And I want to point out Mayor Riordan is also teaching here at UCLA Anderson, and he's my colleague, so I'm doubly pleased to welcome him. So welcome, Mayor Riordan. You went on record a few months ago writing about bankruptcy in general and the fact that many cities in the U.S. are under financial stress. I thought we would start off our conversation discussing how this crisis has affected local communities and cities in particular, and city finances.
I had an op-ed piece in the New York Times last December which spelled out pretty much how this crisis is not just going to affect Los Angeles, but all the other cities in the country, particularly the urban cities. In LA this year, they had major trouble finding a way to cover a $250 million deficit. Next year, that's going to be up to $1 billion, the year after $2 billion, and $3 billion 3 years later. What they're going to have to do is close all the libraries, close all the parks. They're going to have to cut down the police department by 25% or more. They're going to have to do the same with the fire department. And people are going to be very unhappy, and it's going to go on throughout the country.
What do you think are some solutions, to this problem, other than drastic cutting of services? What are some of the silver linings, or what are some of the solutions?
Well, what I suggested in my op-ed piece in the New York Times in December was that the federal government has to get on, like they did on education, where they had race to the top in education. They need a race to the top in pensions, health care, and in effect say, we will guarantee local bonds if you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, increase the retirement age to 65, increase the amount of money each employee has to pay towards pensions, health care by so much, and give all these things. Say, if you do all these things, we will guarantee your bonds.
I think it's pretty likely that we will see some serious social problems and unrest from all of these financial problems, whichever way they get resolved. What we see all over the world right now, from Greece to Ireland and Spain and even France, increasingly Italy, all over Europe certainly, but in the U.S. increasingly also, is that these financial pressures translate into reforms of public finances that are painful for common folk and lead them to go to the streets, and that's something that we might see again in Los Angeles.
I think very predictable. I had my students at UCLA write about predicting the next 10 years in California, and one of the things you can almost definitely see is that the number of people that pay taxes in California probably 10 years from now will be like 30% of the people, 70% not. And so they can vote for entitlements or anything, the 70%, and then you'll have total chaos, because what we see is when one group are paying too much taxes, what do? They move out of the state, they move out of the country.
It's easier to move out of the city, even if you perceive that the problems are within Los Angeles. You, so to speak, secede. You might even see not just people move out of Los Angeles, but you might see movements for certain neighborhoods of Los Angeles to form their own municipalities.
Yeah, and you can run a company from a ski lift with the technology we have today, and as you're seeing now with the companies in LA have expanded overseas. They haven't expanded in LA and California. The number of jobs lost in LA in the last 5 years is 25% of the jobs. Maybe only 12 or 13% are unemployed, but other jobs are lost because they're taking place by part-time workers or people that just decided they're going to retire early, and the state is almost as bad.
Sounds like some amount of deregulation could be a cheap way to get jobs back, jobs coming back here. And that's a general lesson for the country as well.
When have they ever deregulated anything in California? I mean, the codes get bigger and bigger. I mean, literally, the education code is like 20 times bigger than it was 20 years ago. And one thing, I mean, you have the environmental lists make it very expensive to build new buildings and things. They sue you because you're, whatever it is. And I'm not saying I'm against greening things, because I'm in favor of it, but slow down. First of all, let's have the jobs. Let's get the people that make the money, pay the taxes that will allow you to do the greening. But you have all these anti-business laws, all the anti-business regulations in California, and anybody will tell you it's the worst place in the country to start a business. That's why all these businesses have built major buildings and factories in other countries.
This crisis is, if anything, might serve to highlight this problem and force California to change its ways.
Yeah, maybe they have to become friendly to business, and they're going to have, the unions lose jobs for their people by not being friendly to business. When I was mayor, I came on at a time when we'd been through the first recession in the history of Los Angeles, and we had Rodney King riots. And I immediately started working on the fashion industry, the manufacturing. California during my administration became the biggest manufacturing city in the country, mostly through small to medium-sized businesses, which you see in South LA today. And because we were friendly to those businesses, they could get permits on the internet in 95% of the cases. And I'll give you a story, which I'll leave, maybe we can end it with this. A month after I was elected, I had a meeting with the fashion industry to talk about they could do more modeling and all this around and become famous. And at the end of the meeting, two of the leaders came up to me and said, "Mayor, this is small but probably bothering you, but do you know cars get towed away behind the Fashion Mart in LA after 3 o'clock. We get our best customers are mad at us, they don't come back." And so I go out in the hall after the meeting. I came up to Bill Violante, one of my deputies, top deputies, and I told Bill this. I said, "Come up with a solution." So he asked the Department of Transportation. 2 weeks later, they came up with a 50-page solution that showed how you could get rid of these signs within 5 to 8 years. And I said, "That's not enough. I was elected as businessman. Get a simpler plan." And I forgot about it. About a month later, I said, "Well, what happened to that simple plan?" He says, "Mayor, it's taken care of." I haven't seen it. He said, "Mayor, I've said it's taken care of." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "My son and I went out the next night and we took the signs down." So that became our motto. It's much easier to get forgiveness and permission, so just do it. Right. And by the way, what did it was the earthquake. We did that. The people of LA just went out and did it. They didn't try to get permits or anything. They just redid their business, their homes, everything in the city. And in no time, our confidence was back and we're onward and upward.